What's up, everybody? Clint Lamb, a Bama Insider, here to talk about what we've learned about Alabama's offensive line through the first few days of fall camp. Now, the first thing that a lot of people are going to want to talk about when it comes to this group is how much it struggled last season, whether you're talking about keeping Bryce Young adequately protected or you're talking about the inability to create any sort of consistency in the run game. On top of that, you're also losing your best offensive lineman in Evan Neal. That's certainly going to create a lot of concern. But I do think that there are reasons for optimism with this group. The first being, obviously, Eric Wolford, the new offensive line coach. Not only is this guy known as being a fantastic recruiter, which he's already kind of proven, he's also known as being a guy who can develop offensive line talent. Personally, I think that's something that Alabama was lacking a little bit last year. I want you to think about something for a second. Tell me one guy who you can definitively say was a better player, one offensive lineman, definitively better at the end of last year than he was at the beginning of last year. Was it Javian Cohen? Was it Darian Dalcourt, Seth McLaughlin, Emil Ekiyor Jr., maybe a J.C. Latham, a five-star freshman who everybody was hoping could contribute? You know, Javian Cohen, in my mind, he was a good player at the start of last year. He was a good player at the end of last year. Emil Ekiyor Jr., same thing. Very steady. Didn't see a whole lot of growth or development. Darian Dalcourt and Emil Ekiyor Jr. both dealt with some injuries. That contributes. But you didn't see anybody who stepped into the starting lineup or who was a starter at any point last season. Damian George, Seth McLaughlin. McLaughlin was really good in his first start. He was pretty good against Auburn. He helps provide some stability against them. But who's a guy who you can definitively say was better at the end of last year than he was at the beginning? That is a lack of development from every single one of your offensive linemen. And that is an area that I think Eric Wolford can help improve. And if the offensive line can improve as a whole, just from positive growth and development, it's going to be better than it was last year, even if you did lose a talent such as Evan Neal. Evan Neal's another one. I thought he was a good player last year. He has an elite skill set. Do I think that last season was his best year as a football player? No, I do not. Once again, didn't see a whole lot of growth and development on Alabama's offensive line. So that is one area that I definitely think that Alabama can improve in this season under Eric Wolford. Why? Because this group has talent, guys. You've got two five-star plus offensive tackles on the roster in J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer. You got a couple of more five-star talents in Tyler Booker and Elijah Pritchett. Obviously, Pritchett's dealing with a torn pec. That is probably going to cost him his freshman season, or at least most of it. But on top of that, you've got a couple of more top 100 prospects coming out of high school in Amari Kite and Terrence Ferguson. You've got other players who, despite the fact that they maybe weren't as highly rated coming out of high school, they've proven that they have enough talent to survive in the SEC. A Javian Cohen is considered by many to be Alabama's best NFL prospect along its offensive line. Seth McLaughlin is a good player, despite the fact that he was ranked outside of the top 400 prospects coming out of high school. Damian George is a guy who has contributed. Darian Dalcourt, obviously. But this is a group that has a lot of talent. And I think that Eric Wolford is going to do what he needs to do to get the most out of that talent. And that includes cross-training guys at different positions. We've seen that in a lot of the practice videos and a lot of the footage and photos that we've been given is you've seen guys working at different positions. A guy like Kendall Randolph or Amari Kite, both of those two players spent the entirety of the spring competing at the left tackle spot. But now that Tyler Steen is on campus, you see Amari Kite working a lot at left guard with the second team. You've seen Kendall Randolph a little bit working at left guard. You've seen Damian George, who started those couple of games at right tackle last year. He spent the spring working at right guard with Emil Ekiyor Jr. out. What has he done in fall camp? He's worked a little bit at right guard. He's worked a little bit at right tackle. He's got some positional flexibility, and they want to make sure that he's ready to play in the event of injuries at either one of those two spots. A guy like Tyler Booker, who we were expecting to provide some depth along Alabama's offensive line. He worked pretty much exclusively at right tackle throughout the spring. What do we see in one of the practice videos that we were provided yesterday by the University of Alabama? We saw him working a little bit at right guard. So Alabama's doing its best to not only find its top five starters right now, it wants to make sure that a lot of that depth that it has is able to play multiple positions in the event of an injury. They don't want Damian George automatically being the guy who steps up if Emil Ekiyor Jr. goes out. If he's not the sixth best offensive lineman, they want to know that, and they want to be able to put the sixth best offensive lineman in there. Is that Tyler Booker? Is that Kendall Randolph, Amari Kite? How do they shuffle things? You'll get a very good feel for where your offensive line stands as a whole when you approach it that way and cross-train guys at multiple positions. But the talent's there. I think the coaching is now there to back up that talent and develop that talent. And I think that that's a huge reason why Alabama fans should be excited about this group, or at least optimistic in a lot of ways, heading into the season. You've got talent and depth available, and you've got a coach who can get the most out of it. That's a winning combination.